concluded that vampires did not exist, and the empress passed laws prohibiting the opening of graves and staking them. And of course, the vampire lived on in works and local superstitions. And of course, in Albania, there are some vampire creatures, striga and vampire. The striga is a vampiric witch in traditional folklore that sucks the blood of infants at night. Well, there's a real... apparently there were lots and lots of them, and I can't believe that there were that many. They really chalked it up to that and rabies. Okay, rabies somewhat, but that many premature burials? They were in a hurry, weren't they? Wow. But anyway, striga is a vampiric witch in traditional Albania that sucks the blood of infants at night while they sleep and turns into a flying insect, traditionally a moth or a bee. Only the striga, I'm saying that wrong, I'm sure, herself could cure those she had drained. She is often pictured as a woman with a hateful stare and a horribly disfigured face. Edith Durham recorded several methods considered effective for descending oneself from these creatures. A cross made of pig bone could be placed at the entrance of a church, only on Easter Sunday though, rendering any of these creatures inside unable to leave. They could be then captured and killed. And she further recorded the story that after draining blood from a victim, these creatures would generally go off into the woods and regurgitate it. If silver coin were to be soaked in that blood and wrapped in cloth, it would become an amulet offering permanent protection from them. Yes, and a bell, and also the cages over the graves. Yeah. The strings hooked, yeah, the bell. In case somebody woke up, yeah. And also they were putting cages over their grave sites so they couldn't actually get out. In Greece, the modern Greek, it's a word from Slavic word meaning werewolf, has much in common with the European vampire. It persisted throughout Greek history and became widespread, that many practices were enforced to prevent and combat vampirism. Yeah, exactly, Chris. Exactly. You got it. Chris said they started burying people with strings hooked to their finger and a bell. Yes, in case it was a premature burial and they woke up. And they also started putting cages over the grave sites. And that's where, of course, Chris says Saved by the Bell came from. Exactly. Okay, we were in Greece, and they had many practices to prevent and combat vampirism. The deceased were often exhumed after 3 years of death, and remains placed in a box by relative. Wine was poured over them, while a priest would read scripture. However, if the body had not sufficiently decayed, the corpse would be labeled a vampire and dealt with appropriately. Vampirism could occur throughout various means. Being excommunicated, desecrating a religious day, committing a crime, or dying alone. Other causes included having a cat jump across one's grave, eating meat from a sheep killed by a wolf, and being cursed. The Greek vampires were usually thought to be indistinguishable from living people, giving rise to many folk tales with this theme. Crosses and blessed bread from the church were used as a ward. To prevent vampires rising from the dead, their hearts were pierced with iron nails while resting in their graves, or their bodies burned and the ashes scattered. Okay. In Hungary, of course, the Middle Ages, and the bloodthirsty creatures are mentioned all over the Inquisition's notes. Of course they were, excuse me. Hungarian inquisitors interrogated the pagan shaman during a trial who claimed the existence of a demon, which was called Izychus, which means blood drinker. That demon was described as a wild entity that could eventually be called to destroy the enemies of the pagans. Okay. The word has its roots to the ancient language during the late 8th century. It goes back even to back then. Iceland. The Icelandic draugr is usually translated as ghosts, but unlike mainland ghosts, Icelandic undead were believed to be corporeal. Icelandic scholars have argued that the Icelandic draugr has more in common with the Eastern European vampire. Okay. Lots and lots. Okay, let me ask this question. Each country they have their own, but they all kind of state the same, that these, whatever you want to call them, drink blood from their victims. And the first category in that being, they're put into two categories in Iceland. The first being guardians, which are undead that stay in certain places. Usually their burial mound or home are protected and their treasures from thieves. These are depicted as being driven by greed and unwillingness to part with their worldly belongings. The second category is a type of undead, a human rib given life by drinking the blood of a witch and then sent out to steal milk and money. Okay. Milk, I don't know why. That's kind of a little strange. Parasitic ghosts who roam the earth and harass the living and try to drive them mad or even kill them, often by dragging them into their graves and turn their victims into more. So there, all these places, again in Iceland, methods used to destroy them, decapitation of the suspect, of course, was common. Driving nails or sharp stakes into the body. To pin it down into its grave. So how could all these countries, yes, they have different names, but the method to which they keep them down is the same, pretty much. Decapitation, put the stake through the heart, all that. So is there something to this, you think, or not? Okay, Romania. Of course, we know Romania. Romanian vampires are known as moroi, meaning dead. That'll do it. Or the Slavic word meaning nightmare. Live strigoi were described as living witches with two hearts or souls, sometimes both. They were said to have the ability to send out their souls at night to meet with other strigoi and consume the blood of livestock and neighbors. But also, dead strigoi were described as reanimated corpses that sucked the blood and attacked their living family. Live strigoi became revenants after their death. But there were also many other ways a person become a vampire. A person born with a caul, a tail, or extra hair was doomed to become a vampire. Yeah, they did. But they all had the same means of getting rid of the vampires or whatever they're called in their culture. So it's just kind of strange because it's not like they could get mail and see what was going on over in the other country. So was there something to this, to a point? I don't know. Anyway, they were doomed to be a vampire. The same fate applied to the seventh child in any family, as well as someone born too early or someone whose mother had encountered a black cat crossing her path. Here we go. If a pregnant woman did not eat salt or was looked upon by a vampire or a witch, her child would become a vampire. And so, too, would a child born of wedlock. Others at risk of becoming vampires were those who died an unnatural death or before baptism. And a person with red hair and blue eyes was seen as a potential strigoi. Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, how could they all come to the same means of, quote unquote, destroying a vampire, not knowing what was going on in the other country, yet all the methods were basically the same. Another type of Romanian vampire are humans born with a tail, and they can shapeshift into a werewolf. But they have control over that, and their entire power is kept in their tail. Okay. Romanian vampires were said to bite their victims over the heart or between the eyes, and sudden deaths could indicate the presence of vampire. Graves were often opened 5 or 7 years after, and the corpse checked for vampirism. So there you go. Of course, you also had the succubus. There you have vampiric tendencies. Irish myths alone in combination may have contributed to the storylines of Bram Stoker. So there you go. There are just so many out there. Let's see. Some other folklore include a magician or immoral person suffering an unnatural or untimely death, such as suicide, improper burial rituals, an animal jumping or a bird flying over the corpse, or the empty grave. Okay. And even being born with teeth, with a caul, teeth, or tail, being conceived on certain days. People in Russia who are known to talk to themselves were at risk for becoming a vampire. Oh, well, I'm in deep trouble then, because I talk to myself all the time because I like my answers better. Slavic vampires were able to appear as butterflies. So there you go. Some traditions spoke of living vampires or people with 2 souls. So there you go. And of course, like, we talked about the Vlad Tepes. So, but so many. But what I'm saying is all these different countries and everything, but they all had the same methods of destroying the vampires. No, it's not the same. It's not the same. This was all kind of during that same period of time. Kind of, but not. But this goes on and on. But they had no means of communication, so to speak. It's not like we could call them on the phone. No, it's more than that. Yeah, understand what I'm saying? It's like, okay, the caveman, okay, say caveman on the East Coast was doing the same thing as a caveman on the West Coast. That's not tradition. There's something to it then. There's a basis for their methods. Why are they doing the same things? You understand what I'm saying? No, that's not the same thing. So, anyway, one of the earliest recordings of vampire activity came from Croatia in 1672. It reports the local vampire of the village as the cause of a panic among the villagers. A former peasant died. However, local villagers claimed he returned from the dead and began drinking the blood from the people and sexually harassing his widow. The village leader ordered the stake to be driven through his heart, but the method failed to kill him, and he was beheaded. And so it goes. But see, again, staked him. Now, they're not all going to do the same thing unless there's something going on somewhere. I don't think it's just all tradition. I'm just stating a fact. I'm not voicing my opinion. I'm just saying that it seems strange that, they would all have the same. They all kind of drank the blood and, got fat off of them or dragged them to their lair to create more vampires. But there was, how could the other people, the 3 countries away, know this and do the same things? Okay? It's not just tradition. There's got to be something